What is up? It's a Figure Hunter, and today we're going to look at the Huawei GT Runner. And not only are we going to look at it in the gray and yellow format, but we're also going to look at it in the black and gray format. We're going to talk about the ins and outs of the heart rate accuracy when tracked against a CrossFit or high-intensity interval training workout, sleep analysis quality when compared to a Whoop sleep tracking analysis, the smartwatch use, the health reminders, the health, wellness, and features, and the workout and training analysis. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing for more. Now, before we get into any of the details, I want to give a disclaimer. You're going to see some functions that make it seem like this is the world's coolest watch or could appear to be the world's coolest watch. Just stay tuned for each section's pros and cons to see if some of the cool factor wore off after actually using it for a period of time. But with that, we're going to look at three basic sections. We're going to look at it as a smartwatch, basically the hands-on of the gray model and the black model, and then look at all the ins and outs of the smartwatch use and application. Second, we're going to look at the health and wellness features. We're going to look at a sleep analysis when compared with the Whoop sleep tracking analysis to see how it sort of fares with Whoop as a slightly more accurate sleep analysis tracker. And then last, we're going to look at the training and workout analysis. We're going to look at it in the heart rate accuracy when looking at a number of workouts sort of back to back. We're going to look at the training load details and the recommendations it gives there and the workout analysis itself. And with that, let's dive in. We're going to look at the hands-on of the watch, talk about the smartwatch uses, and then in each of these sections, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each at the end. So let's dive in. All right, so here the watches are. You can see the differences between the two from a color scheme format. This has got the Tefecta wristband on it, which I think is just super rad. I'll put a link down below, but I just bought one of these on Black Friday sale. But it just clips in like that. It's like fully stretchy. But just looks really cool because of the way it clips in. So that I really like. Anyway, so back to the watch. This is the band that comes with it, a sort of a dark gray, black. But when you look at the differences between the two, you can see that the black versus the gray, they both have a big 1.4-inch AMOLED screen, which has high pixel resolution. You can see the differences on the screen here. And there's basically some sort of fancy antenna design built into this top part here where they have the GPS antenna going up there. It doesn't matter as much to me in testing things for CrossFit and high intensity interval training, but everything just looks really good. It's got a metal bezel around the edge, although a full plastic casing. So let's look at the gray one specifically, because I really want to show off the looks of this watch. The band is really stretchy and comfortable. I like that it has the black offset with the gray. I like that it has the yellow accent here. You have a speaker and a microphone. The microphone, I think, is, well, wherever it is, it's a microphone on it, and a speaker, so you can take calls here and talk to people. It works actually functionally really well. You have one button. This is a rotating crown as well as a button. Then you have the heart rate SpO2 sensor on the back, quick release on the band itself. And then the black is going to have a similar sort of appearance to it, just going to be all black. So you have red accent on the dial, which I really like. I originally got the gray and yellow, and I thought, man, this is a watch I'm going to want to keep because I just like it. And so I ordered the black. So here you go. It's got sort of an etching, slight etching to the bezel, but just all black. Oh, there's the microphone, and all black around the back. So that's how the two look and appear in simple form. So we'll focus just on the differences, or not the differences, but the benefits and features when it comes to the watch itself. So you basically have this widget system where you can change which widgets. I think you're limited to 6. And you can see all of the features there. I love that it has, what phase the moon is in. Click that to go home. You click to the right, and it'll basically give you a weather snapshot as well as any music you're playing or anything you're playing on your phone. You swipe down, you'll get the settings screen. We'll look at that on this actually, because these have active widgets. So resting heart rate, there's what it just really, really cool. One slight problem is that it doesn't update the weather all the time. Swipe to the left when you go back, and then there's the next widget. Can't click into any sleep details here. You have to go to the app. And that was an empty screen. So here's what the extra screen looks like. And then you swipe up for any notifications. Notifications come in really smooth and really clear. A lot of times it'll have the little emoticons that'll come in with it. And I just really like that this settings screen. I think this is actually just a fully functional settings drop down where you can dive into all the settings if you'd like. Again, you swipe right to go back, and you can just access a lot of basic things. To Find My Phone, that's a really useful feature and benefit. And then you go into the apps. So all the basic functional apps you could need. Obviously you can get more features. We'll look at more features later on in the review, but just everything functions well. One thing I wanted to mention as well is watch faces. This one is a crazy cool watch face because you can see it has a whole lot of access to different data things. So you can dive into your sleep, and this does give you more sleep details. You can dive into the altitude, you can dive into the weather, see all the weather details. You just sort of tap and you can dive anything. You can dive in here and see your workout records. You can dive in here and see your training load over time. It just, settings, you can just get into all of it really quickly that way through this watch app. And then a lot of the other apps, or a lot of the other watch faces, if you hold down, it basically gives you a bunch of different selections, but you will not get the full laundry list of watch face that you would get if you were in Europe or outside of the US. But I feel like all the watch faces are relatively what I would need to be able to enjoy all the features and benefits. So this one is just super cool. Let's take a look at the app and then talk about pros and cons when it comes to how this functions as a smartwatch. All right, so this is the basic app. So you're going to have a simple summary of the day up top, and you can get into any of these sort of functional things that can evaluate, different aspects of whatever occurred that day. And then you have the records down below. So you can see just it sort of lays it out by tiles and all of the simple sort of straight line. You can edit which tile goes where, but these are the tiles that you get. And then you can track a workout directly from the phone itself, linked to the watch. And then here's where you get your devices. And this is about as simple as it gets. So you go into the devices. A lot of these things, I think, there's a lot of functions that are not available in the US. So you're not going to have your laundry list of watch face selection here, which typically should appear where you can choose from hundreds of watch faces, but that doesn't happen here. And one thing I just realized, that you can't edit the screens that appear on the watch when you're in a workout. So you can't change the data fields that I see here. Really simple stuff in the settings, just turn on all the health features, set your alarms, weather reports, things like that. All of it's really simple. The updates really work. It comes in, but it just takes 45 minutes to update every single time they come up with a major update. The device settings, there's literally no real device settings there. So it's just a real simple, more dumbed down version than what probably is available overseas. But that's how it looks. This is really, at the same time, this maybe is everything you might need in the app because it just focuses on your wellness and your training. Okay, so what are the pros and cons with the smartwatch used just as a basic smartwatch? The pros, obviously, it's beautiful. It is a very good looking watch, and it, just sort of stands out, the brilliance and the vibrance of the screen, the overall functionality, and that bleeds into another pro is that it all really seems to work. Some of its applications are really simple and dumbed down or just sort of basic or straightforward, but at the same time, it all works. The syncing with the app, it works. The operation of the settings menus, it works. The simple settings drop down, it's just a functional watch. Additionally, when you look at an always on display, when you look at a vibrant screen, it's getting good battery life at about 3 days. Now that's a far cry from the 7 days of quoted use, but 3 days, maybe more, 3 to 4. When you look at an always on screen, I have it set to auto dim or auto adjust the brightness, and everything works within a 3-day time frame. The widgets are great. Everything sort of functions smoothly there. So what are the cons when it comes to the smartwatch details? Well, the weather app, sometimes widget wouldn't update. You have to, open the Huawei app on the phone to get it to update the weather. And then that's another thing. The biggest con was that the updates take forever, and usually about 45 minutes to give a new update to the watch. And I had to do 5 of them initially when I got out of the box to catch it up with what it is now. But all those things aside, there's really no other cons when it comes to the functional usage of this as a smartwatch and functionally with the app, and it just all worked. So now let's talk about the wellness and sleep, and we're going to look at it in 3 parts. We're going to look at the wellness features on the watch, the wellness features on the app, and then we're going to talk about the quantifiable value of the sleep tracking analysis. So with that, let's dive in. Okay, so what are the health and wellness features on here? They have a few simple ones, so you can, again, scroll there. So you can get your heart rate, see your heart rate throughout time. I do like that it shows your resting heart rate average in that summary screen on the widget we saw before. So basically your resting heart rate, you can just see if your trending is going down, so your resting heart rate is getting stronger and better over this little chart. And then in the apps itself, you have SpO2 tracking, which pretty much does it effectively over your sleep. And it seems like it's relatively accurate. I don't tend to track or test these things, but it does have SpO2 tracking. You have healthy living. Healthy living is an interesting concept because it basically is a list of goals that you set for yourself, and it'll give you reminders on the watch and on the app. Your breathing, your activity, see if you had activity. But one thing that's really cool about it is this medications. So you can set it to have medication reminders. I have it to remind me to take beta alanine throughout the day and then creatine once a day. It'll pop up like at 10, at 2, whatever times you set and whatever medication or supplements you programmed in there. So that's actually pretty sweet, the fact that it has a reminder system in it to help you take medications. So that is healthy living. And then obviously sleep. Let's go stress first. Stress is interesting. It tracks, your heart rate variability. It doesn't say that that's what it is, but that's what stress comes from, or stress tracking comes from. But it really only tracks throughout the night's sleep. So here it has huge gaps in the day because there's too much wrist movement. So not really worthwhile because it doesn't summarize as well. It doesn't summarize your overall stress throughout your sleep, which it should. And then there's sleep. So in sleep, you can get a little bit of details off of the watch, and most of the details are going to be on the app itself, which you'll look at. Breathing exercises, that's another really helpful thing if you're feeling stressed. If you just want to recenter and focus yourself, it's got breathing exercises on there. That's the summary of things on the watch. Let's look on the app. All right, so what you see in the app when it comes to wellness, obviously you have wellness things like steps, step goals, number of intensity minutes you've accumulated for the day or for the week or for the month. You can click on, all these the minor icons, little, calorie icons, so your calories for the day. So you can see all those things. But the most basic, is in layers. So you have the SpO2, which you can see, even though I'm wearing the watch all day, it didn't pick up SpO2 readings, but it did pick it up throughout the night. And that is generally pretty accurate for what my SpO2 is, although it's never been lab tested. You have your stress tracking, which is a cool concept, testing your heart rate variability to determine it as an indicator of stress. And you can see that while I was asleep, this actually looks a lot like the body battery screen, where there's some higher stress in the beginning and lower stress. I think because I had a beer before I went to bed. There's lower stress as the beer settles out of my system. But it doesn't translate it to any kind of stress score or overall score. And then in the daytime, you'll have gaps where there's just nothing tracked. So it's not worthwhile during the day, which would be when you would have higher stress. So not really helpful there. And then skin temperature, I don't know what this is based on. I mean, I keep my room super cold, so it's just obviously picking that up, but it's not actually helping me evaluate my body temperature and any changes there. Weight management, that's a good thing. And then sleep, so the sleep shows all the primary details you might want to see with regard to stages. And we're going to look at the sleep analysis in a second when it comes to what it compares to how to evaluate stages on the Huawei GT Runner versus the Whoop. So you can see that it says naps in there. So that's a really kind of a cool thing. You have a nap, or there was a nap that occurred for 24 minutes, and that's exactly right. I laid down for 24 minutes. It's super helpful just that it adds in naps, but it doesn't change any kind of scores. The score here is always like in 78 to 83. So it's always in this short little range. So the sleep score doesn't really provide a lot of value. And then this is actually a really cool thing that will send reminders. So you can have reminders for anything when it comes to healthy living reminders. So you can have a health plan. You can remind you to take steps, remind you to focus on your mood by doing a breathing exercise. reminders for everything. Originally, I had reminders to drink water, but it goes off every hour for the most part and became a little bit annoying. And then here you can see medication reminders, which I've translated into supplement intake reminders, which is actually really cool because I don't want to take a big chunk of beta alanine and feel itchy for 2 hours. So I just want to take it throughout the day. And it'll remind you at 10, 2, and 6 to take the reminders. So really neat there, although you can't check it off on the watch. So that's actually kind of annoying. But it gives you a summary, and then in the watch or on the app, you can see how many you've accomplished for the day. So in the medication reminders, you go in there and did I take this? Okay, I took the 10 o'clock version. So now if I go back, it says I've done 1 out of 3 medication reminders are completed. So that's the summary of healthy living. So now we're going to look at how does the sleep in the stage evaluation in the stages compared to that of another device that it has a little bit of relative accuracy when it comes to stage tracking. All right, so here what I've done is just taken the sleep and compared each night of sleep to the sleep stages accumulated off of the Whoop. That just has a little bit more accuracy. It's not like any kind of near lab level. To be able to see is like the amount of time in deep and the amount of time in REM specifically. Is it similar to what you get in Whoop? And I just formulated a chart. And so when you look at the chart, so the Whoop deep sleep, 1.98 hours, and the GT Runner deep sleep, 1.93. That was really good. And then the Whoop REM for that night was 0.78, but the GT Runner REM was 1.22. So a difference there. And you can see across the board, if your eyes just sort of glance down, the deep on the Whoop versus the deep on the GT Runner, you can see that some nights it actually had relative closeness and some nights it didn't. A little bit more relative closeness on some of the REM nights, although one night was very different. So when you go in to look at percentages and how it compares, if you were to look at green, orange, and red, you have a number of nights where the REM matched up or was in a 10% variable with the Whoop's evaluation, and then less on the deep evaluation. So, a lot of times there are some apps just in the general world that will summarize the total amount of deep in REM that will determine your restorative stages. So that's what I focused on. I sort of totaled the amount of time Whoop said I was in deep and REM, and then the amount of time GT Runner said I was in deep and REM, and then I made a chart for that. So how did these compare? So the restorative time evaluation, if you add those two factors, deep and REM together, showed that, that there were some greens, there were some oranges, and there were some reds, but with the overall summary of the comparison across 8 nights is 125%. So it over-evaluates the amount of restorative time, but it's not way off in my opinion. I think the sleep stages also is not super useful for evaluating your health. So it's just sort of a factor that I just wanted to see as like a small study. Okay, so what are the pros and cons when it comes to the wellness, sleep, overall types of features and benefits? The health reminders is a cool concept. The fact that I could put in supplements and time them, and it would give me a reminder to my phone when I needed to take a supplement or a reminder to the watch. The sleep was good enough when it comes to, in my opinion, of the sleep analysis when it compares to the Whoop, because the bottom line with sleep is that no watches really take into account what the sleep stages mean and how the sleep stages translate. A lot of us, when we look at the sleep stages, it's nice to know that it's accurate, but at the same time, we don't say, okay, well, I got 47 minutes of deep sleep and my goal was an hour and 15 minutes of deep sleep. We don't have a relative understanding of how much deep or REM or the restorative cycles of the sleep that we really need to be getting. It all comes down to how much sleep. And a lot of sleep studies, a lot of sleep sort of recommendations show that it all depends on just getting that 7 to 8 hours of sleep being the primary important aspect to work on or focus on within sleep itself. So those things didn't really matter. And then I just thought it was a super cool thing because the watch face actually turns off automatically when it detects that you have fallen asleep. So you do say battery life there, and it just sort of stays on full and vibrant until the watch can tell that you've fallen asleep, and then it turns off for the night. And then when it tells that you've woken up, then it turns back on. So what are the cons when it comes to the wellness aspects? The stress tracking is relatively worthless. The temperature tracking during your sleep is relatively worthless. Stress will track correctly throughout the night, but it basically doesn't track correctly throughout the day. It's like missing hours and hours because there's just too much movement on the wrist and they haven't figured that out. And then they don't give you a summarized stress score or recovery. It doesn't tie into any kind of recovery on the wellness side. And then the sleep score itself is relatively useless. I'm just like always getting between 78 and 82. No matter if I get a 5-hour night of sleep or an 8-hour night of sleep, it's always just giving me the same score, and that isn't helpful for anything. And the last thing, the health reminders were a really cool feature when I saw it in there. And that's one of those things that originally was like, oh, this is awesome to remind me when I need to take certain supplements. But at the end of the day, because you can't check off that you took the supplement on the watch, you have to go into the app and you have to go into the sleep record or health records and you have to check it off there. And then it just doesn't communicate any usefulness outside of just the fact that a reminder pops up. So that's the summary of the pros and cons when it comes to wellness. And now let's talk about the backbone of everything when it comes to the training and the workout analysis. So we're going to look at first heart rate accuracy and look at a number of charts as how it compares to a Polar H10 chest strap. You can connect this watch to a chest strap. That is fine, although it does require it to be connected only to the chest strap. So the Polar H10 has multiple channels and I couldn't connect it to another device if I did connect it to the watch. So that was kind of annoying. But we're gonna look at the accuracy of just the watch itself when doing CrossFit and high intensity interval training. This is the hardest, most rigorous type of workouts to test against an optical heart rate sensor. So that's a kind of a big deal. Secondly, we're gonna look at the workout and training aspects on the watch. And then last, we're gonna look at it on the app. So let's dive in.
Heart rate graph off of the GT runner. I couldn't export the data. I didn't see a way here in the US on the app to export the data. So I just had to do an overlay when it compares to a chest strap. So in each of these, you'll see this, and then you'll see the Polar matched and paired overlaid on top of it to evaluate the heart rate accuracy of the optical heart rate sensor when doing a CrossFit. And in these workouts, I'm like moving the watch up my arm to put on wrist wraps or hand wraps. So there's a lot of movement going on and it's in different places on my arm. So there's a lot of noise, but we'll see how it looks when it comes to the charts. So here's one chart. You can see that it picked up the lifting portions really kind of perfectly and then missed on one part of the Metcon. But overall, I would say that's 90% accurate. Here's another where it did the same thing. It didn't quite get as high on the lifting portion and it missed part of the first layer of the intensity of the workout, but picked up the back half nearly perfectly. I would say this is, an 88, 90% accuracy. And then here's another one where it actually was awesome in the intervals. It just overlaid perfectly. Didn't quite catch the first part of the lifting portion, but we're down in the 108 range. So a lot of that is worthless. It's not like going to calculate into a, high training load anyway. But it caught the most important parts. Here's another one where it caught the workout excellently, like excellently. The lifting portions, the fluctuation of heart rate in the lifting portion, and the Metcon did a fantastic job. Here's another one where it did miss one lift for whatever reason, but overall did a fantastic job on catching the overall flow of the heart rate. I especially like that it catches the peaks and the values of heart rate. Here's another really highly excellent one. So picked up all the front stage and the back half, and the Metcon. It caught the highs and lows, like the change in heart rate when you're doing a heavy lift. And that's it. So I feel like in looking at all these heart rate graphs, it is an excellent, I'd say like mid 90% accuracy, but relatively in simple terms, I'd say it is a trustworthy heart rate sensor for tracking a workout for CrossFit and high intensity interval training. And that is the most important thing.
All right, so what are the training features? We're going to look at it in layers. So first, what you see when you go to a workout, so you can pick like a million different workout types. It does have CrossFit, it does have high intensity interval training. The one thing you want to do for all of them is you want to go in, the settings are just super minimal, but the reminders, you want to make sure there is none, or else it will speak to you really loudly. It'll say, you've done 10 minutes, or you've done this. So you want to just turn off no intervals, and then heart rate. I don't know why it says heart rate off, but either way, you go into the workout and then you start the workout, and it just has a few basic screens where you can see your training stress building over time.
if you had MP3s on there, you could swipe over and play the MP3s or control the MP3s. But it just has a few simple screens that I think you can actually edit what screens you see in the app. But that is still left to be seen. And so you pause, you want to end it, and perfect. It said you can't save it. So when you get done with a workout, you'll basically go to the workout record, and this is what it'll look like. It'll actually have a summary of your time and calories, your heart rate over time, averages, all those types of things. This is a glitch. It knows my heart rate zones when it goes into the app, but for whatever reason, it doesn't know my heart rate zones in the watch, just sort of some sort of glitch. But it'll track your recovery heart rate. I was still moving around after this, so I didn't really drop that much. And then it'll show you your training stress over time and your recovery time. So it gives you a snapshot. This is a little bit lower than what I would typically get by about 40% or 30 or 40% on a Garmin, but it's still, it'll give you a recovery time that goes into what we'll see next. So you can see your impact, both aerobic and anaerobic, and then your heart rate in the simple summary. And then you go into the workout status. Now, this is actually a really cool feature. So it's got, if you're a runner, it's got a runner ability index, which is, a way to evaluate your running and how it's progressing, but it's got training load. Now, so I've been using 2 watches, and so my training load on one watch is better than on another watch. So I'm fully recovered. And then there's my training load. So I didn't work out the last couple of days on this watch. I did on that watch. So it's not as perfect, but you can see it accumulates over time, and it builds like a dial up top, and it shows you your training load history. But in simple form, it really works. It really is what you would need. I mean, the 2 things you really need is training load and recovery time, coupled with the rigor analysis of the aerobic and anaerobic effect of the workout. I don't know what this training index indicates. I don't know. I mean, fitness and fatigue is a common terminology for a version of training evaluation, but it hasn't populated across about 10 days of workouts, So I don't know if it's going to populate after a longer period of time. So maybe I'll do a video on that later on. But the fact that it has these simple training things, let's look at it on the app and then talk about it. All right, so when it comes to workout evaluations and training on the app, here's where the Huawei GT Runner unfortunately has a big miss. I mean, it's nice that it's recorded in the watch, but you don't have training load. You don't have recovery time here from a summarized perspective. You don't have any of those running index features, at least here in the US, on the app itself. You do get a full, overview of features when it comes to the workouts themselves. So you can see the aerobic training stress, the anaerobic, and then the recovery time. This was a really rough workout. And you can see the chart. It just, the lifting portion, everything was, heart rate recovery. That's kind of interesting, but obviously I'm always putting stuff away. So the heart recovery never seems to be that helpful, but it gives you that full summary of the aerobic and the anaerobic training after you've completed a workout on the app. You can see it, as well as your recovery time, when that recovery time started, although it's running a constant countdown on the recovery time on the watch itself. So that is it, though, for what you actually get on the training side. And that is a big miss. They really should be putting training load in the app to be able to see it in big, bold colors.
Now, looking at the pros and the cons for the training and workout analysis aspects that the Huawei GT Runner brings to the table, there are a solid list of pros. The fact that it has aerobic effect, or the evaluation of that workout's impact on your aerobic progression, the fact that it has anaerobic effect, and the fact that it has training load over time to evaluate how your training load is going in the recent week versus a longer period of time. I couldn't get the training index evaluation to actually populate, so that might take longer than a couple of weeks. So I'll continue to see if that's something I want to re-review later down the road. And if you are a runner, this has a ton of running features on it for the price. Again, it's just impressive that for the price, it is got all those different things on it. So on the con side, there's no training analysis screen or snapshot on the app. That makes no sense. All of the training lives in the watch, and you can't see any of those features on the app, at least not here in the US. So that makes no sense, because they have some good feature-rich aspects that they're offering, but to not use it, to be able to see it in bigger, brighter display on the app is it makes no sense. The second or minor thing is that it underreports recovery time. I have found that Garmin recovery time is really spot on, from the rigor of a workout to how much recovery time I need to be able to approach the next rigorous workout. It has been just really accurate for me when it comes to CrossFit training and high intensity interval training. And this underreports. It's bringing up about 70%, 60 to 70% of the recovery time that a Garmin watch is recommending, which I feel like is about 60 to 70% of the recovery time I actually need. And then the last minor thing is when you look at the workout summary on the watch, for whatever reason, there's a glitch that they haven't caught in an update that it just categorizes all your heart rate as extreme. When it flows through the app, it doesn't matter because it's correct. It's got the heart rate stages or the zones to correctly assess how much time you spent in each zone. And when it comes to the aerobic training effect and the anaerobic training effect, it doesn't affect it there either. So the training effect aspects are being calculated correctly off of the amount of time spent in different zones, but it just doesn't look correct because it says your whole workout was extreme. So all those things aside, what do I think of the Huawei GT Runner in summary? I think this is an awesome all-around watch for the price, specifically for the price. Now, again, it's 130 euros, which translates to about 136 US dollars. But to get it in the US, you have to pay more money. It is available on Amazon, or is available on different, eBay vendors, but at the same, so it's going to cost you 250 or somewhere between 200 and 275. But I think it's a fully featured watch in a lot of ways. There's definitely some issues with the fact that you can't get the training load aspects on the app. And then the wellness aspects don't provide enough value. I think the biggest area that Huawei needs to focus on are the wellness and recovery features, not the recovery time for the workout, but specifically the wellness features and how it translates into recommendations for your life. Because some of those things are there, but they don't translate into recommendations for life, so they don't actually have much value at the end of the day. But in summary, it is a big, beautiful, good-looking, fully functional smartwatch with good training capabilities. The heart rate accuracy is excellent. The workout analysis is useful. The training load is useful. And the recovery time is pretty useful. And all of those things makes this a great and good-looking option for a lower price point. So with that, that is the full review for the Huawei GT Runner. It's the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.